Welcome back to another edition of the Sooner Pocket Podcast. I'm Sam here with Chris. www.soonerpocket.com. Make sure to check it out. Lots of good pregame and postgame content. Cool stuff from Chris on there. And we make sure to recap each game every week. Some of these last couple games have not been very fun to recap. Starting with Texas. And then we moved to South Carolina, got smacked down a little bit. And we had some hope provided last week against Ole Miss. Offense looked really good in the first half. They were moving the ball, spreading the field a little bit. Defense and offense both really broke in the second half. Chris, what was your biggest takeaway from that Ole Miss game?
The biggest takeaway is that it did end up being a situation like Spencer Rattler had in 2020. He started off pretty well against it was Missouri State, if I remember correctly, and then next couple games against Kansas State, against Iowa State, he didn't look too great. Didn't look good against Texas at the start of the game, and Lincoln Riley ended up benching him when he came back in the second half. He was a different quarterback, and he was a different quarterback the rest of the year. It's a completely different Spencer Rattler. It was the same thing with Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold was kind of a turnover bug in the first in those last few games that he started, and he did have the one fumble against Ole Miss, but I'm not going to blame him for that. When an offensive lineman does not block one of the defensive linemen, he just has a free rush at the quarterback. It's only so much the quarterback can do there. And but he looked more polished. His decision making looked better. What it told me is that there's a chance. We have, even with a makeshift offense, a lot of what we have are the tools. And I can't remember which offensive lineman it was that went down. I think it was Jacob Sexton. As bad as
Yep.
our offensive line looked at the end of the game, up until he went down, they looked better than they had all year. In fact, you're not going to believe me when I say this, but this game against Ole Miss, in terms of just pass blocking, according to PFF, that was one of our better games of the year. I'm looking on here right now. To see how exactly it has our games graded with pass blocking. And let's see here. It's being difficult with me. Here we go. So when it comes to our best pass blocking game, it has it at Auburn, number 2, Houston, number 3, Ole Miss. Said that we had a pretty good game blocking. It was just how at the very end of the game, we just collapsed. There were like 5 sacks allowed across 7 plays. We have the pieces to make it work. And now we've gone up against multiple really good offenses. We went up against Tennessee. We went up against Texas. We went up against South Carolina, who has a deceptively good offense. And now we've gone up against Ole Miss. And our defense kept us in all of them. We kind of had a collapse in the second quarter against Texas, but the other 3 quarters of that game, we did great. We held Tennessee in check. We held one of the best running backs in the SEC in Raheem Sanders in check against South Carolina. And we held the Ole Miss ground attack in check. It was just that air attack that they killed us in the third quarter. We have the pieces. That's what I pulled from this game. We have the pieces to make something work, and we have the defense to give us an opportunity to win the rest of our schedule. It's just the offense is so bad because of the offensive line. You could get
Yeah.
Tom Brady, Randy Moss, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Mark Andrews out there as the skill players, and Adrian Peterson. But with that offensive line, they're scoring maybe 20 points a game. It's just, there's only so much you can do with that offensive line.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. Bad offensive line play is almost impossible to overcome, especially in the SEC. There are conferences where you can get by with that a little bit, but against the level of competition you're facing in the SEC, especially in the trenches, near impossible. Looking across the rest of the Week 9 slate, aside from Oklahoma, we saw Missouri, much to my pleasure anyway. Missouri got walloped 34-0 in Tuscaloosa. Texas had a close one against Vanderbilt, came down to an onside kick that Vanderbilt could not recover at the end. Florida State is joining OU on the path to bowl ineligibility. Florida State now 1-7. OU not holding out much hope looking at the rest of the season for us to get to 6 wins. And Texas A&M and LSU, the main build game of the week. Texas A&M let that one stay close for a little while, and then they really pulled away. Handed Brian Kelly another special big game Brian loss. Kind of nice to see, but it was a good week of college football. Most of the games, I think, for a change this season, played out as expected. Not a whole lot of surprises. Was there anything that really caught your eye across the college football slate last weekend?
There wasn't really anything too much. I will say I don't know how uh I don't know how Missouri is still ranked. I mean, they've played against two top 10 teams this year. Heck, they played against two ranked teams. Well, I think they played against more than that, but they played against two top 10 teams. And against those two top 10 teams, they got outscored. If I remember correctly, it was like 71 to 10 or 75 to 10 or something like that. They Anytime they have a big opponent this year, not only do they lose bad. They suck. They're terrible. And I don't understand how they're still ranked. I think it goes to show that they are a very overrated team. And I think Oklahoma, if we can put a few things together offensively, we really have a chance to beat them and we have a chance to beat LSU. Uh, Vanderbilt played Texas a lot closer than I was expecting. I thought we'd see Vanderbilt kind of come down from the high that was their last few weeks, especially with the win over Alabama, and then just get blown out by Texas. They they kept it close at the beginning and they kept it close to the end, only losing by 3, 27 to 24. But the main thing I took away from this last week of college football is that this Texas A&M team, I believe right now, and a lot could change, but I believe right now is better than any of the Jimbo Fisher Texas A&M teams. They they look more polished. They are using their talent. They all these 5 stars that Jimbo Fisher brought in, they're finally using them and they're using them well. You've got we saw that they have a backup quarterback who's really good. That backup quarterback came in and completely changed the game. It was 17-7 when he came in. Next thing you know, it's a blowout. It's 38 to 23. I mean, he just really came on and just exploded. Uh, and also Notre Dame, they are a lot better than they were at the beginning of this year. They are not the same Notre Dame team that lost to Northern Illinois. This is a team
Yeah,
that
what,
has a chance to make the
51-14?
playoff. Yeah, 51 to 14 over, as weird as this is to say, a ranked Navy team. Now, granted, of course, there's a talent differential there, but Navy, they've had a really good running attack all year, and they had a pretty good run game against Notre Dame, but Notre
Mm-hmm.
Dame shut down any hope they had at sustained success. Like, yeah, that was ugly.
Yeah, for sure. Um, not to over, I don't want to overanalyze Maine. All due respect to their team, their program, they're an FCS squad that's coming in, I believe, is a 34-point dog to the Sooners. Um, this one, in any kind of an ideal world, this is not a close game. Despite our offensive line struggles, um, I'm hopeful this is a game that can build a little bit off the momentum of the first half of the Ole Miss game. We can walk out there and our guys can at least get the feel of a win again. Um, haven't had it in a few weeks, dropped 3 in a row now. So being able to go out there against a team that admittedly is not on your level, you're a few weeks ahead of them, but you get to have something of a practice round, something of a scrimmage going into the home stretch of your season. Speaking of the home stretch, is kind of the SEC special. Sooners cashing in their first season, scheduling a really poor team in November. Always ragged on the SEC for that, and now we're doing it. So I've got to keep my mouth shut now. But um, this one, offense and defense. Offense, I'm really just looking to see some stuff executed well, see us slow down and make sure that we're getting stuff done right, executing the techniques right on the offensive line, finding a way to run the ball. And lastly, giving Jackson Arnold some time back there to throw. Give him more than 3 seconds to throw. I think if we do that, then what we will have is a game that's really focused on the fundamentals, really focusing on the basics that we need to get right week in and week out to be successful, and gives us some momentum going into the final stretch of our SEC conference schedule, to maybe get something right and find one upset win out of those final three games that maybe will allow us to reach bowl eligibility. And defense, I just want to see them maybe get a turnover again. It's it's been a slow few weeks for the defense, and had some back-breaking performances, unfortunately, at different points of the game. South Carolina, the defense really played a pretty good game across the whole game, but the other two games surrounding the South Carolina game, Texas and then Ole Miss, not not glimmers of hope for the defense. You can sum it up at that. My score prediction on this game is going to be 51-6. We'll say 51-6 Oklahoma. I think we cover that 34-point spread and knock a little over the 52-point over under. What do you
Pretty
got?
much, it's pretty much what the final score was against Temple, 51-3. Uh, I could see that happening. The offensive line is going to be the main thing that I'm watching. And anyone watching this, listening to this, you might be saying, well, it's just Maine. Why are you watching for the offensive line? Because if you remember correctly, against Temple, we allowed 3 sacks. Against
And we
Temple,
couldn't run.
couldn't run the ball. Could not run the ball. Taylor Tatum found some success on one drive. He ran for more yards than any other running back did the entire game. So that was a rough start to the season. Defensively, I don't think we had a great game against Ole Miss and South Carolina, but we had a deceptively good game, is what I'll say. Because when you look at Pro Football Focus, when you look at PFF, our rushing defense, those were our two best games of the season according to PFF. We've had two games this year where our rushing defense scored higher than a 90 on PFF. Those were against South Carolina and Ole Miss. And we went up against some really good runners in those games. What killed us was in the South Carolina game, turnovers. Their defense outscored our offense. Without those turnovers, that's a completely different game. And then against Ole Miss, what killed us is, for whatever reason, despite the fact that we were shutting down their rushing attack in the first half and doing very well against the pass attack in the first half, for whatever reason, we pulled someone out of coverage and to start the second half. We pulled someone out of coverage, put them in the box as a pass rusher or as like a little read guy right there who wasn't in coverage anymore. We went from that man coverage that really shut down the Ole Miss receivers and made it to where they could not move the ball very well against us in the first half to Ole Miss having like 1/3 down on the first 3 drives of the second half. Like we switched to a zone blitz scheme and it killed us. That is where we lost the game. And I didn't understand the change there. I didn't understand it then and I don't understand it now. But at the same time, all these performances boil down to one bad quarter. The Texas game, it was one bad quarter, the second quarter. The Tennessee game, it was the late first quarter, early second quarter when Tennessee got like those 12 points, and that was just kind of enough at that point. It what I'm looking for against Maine is 4 quarters of sustained success. Because if we can show that we can put 4 quarters of sustained success against Maine, then that'll give them something to build on when we go up against Missouri, Alabama, and LSU. Missouri, we've seen that all you have to do is make Garrett Nussmeier make one mistake, and he's going to make a series of mistakes. I mean, the USC defense made LSU's offense look bad. If the USC defense can keep them in check, I have no doubt our defense can. So with the offense, the main thing I'm looking for is to see if we can just protect Jackson Arnold. I know it's a far inferior opponent. Protect Jackson Arnold. And then on defense, I just want to see 4 quarters of sustained success. No matter if it's through the ground, through the air, don't make stupid changes that will cause Maine to get a touchdown on us. The last team we want to give up a touchdown to is Maine. And that the whole offensive line thing, that reminds me. Brent Venables said this week he's fully expecting Jackson Arnold to stay here. Like after this season, he thinks Jackson Arnold's going to stay. And if you remember correctly, 2025 class, we have a really good four-star quarterback coming in. I think he's a top 10 quarterback overall on Rivals or On Three. I can't remember which one. Kevin Sperry. And Sperry, he's probably going to sit 1 year and then expect to be the starter in 2026. So now you've got three quarterbacks in there that are all going to be in that room and want to start next year or the year after. You've got Jackson Arnold, you've got Michael Hawkins, you've got Kevin Sperry. I imagine we'll keep Kevin Sperry because that will give Jackson Arnold time to teach him some stuff and then move on so Kevin Sperry can come in. What do you think happens with Michael Hawkins? Think he sticks around?
Absolutely. Um, Brent Venables has shown a commitment to guys that are in the program, giving the lean to them. I don't see any way that Hawkins transfers out, absent some serious personnel issue that comes up in the locker room, wherever. Um, I see zero probability Hawkins transfers. If anyone transfers, it's going to be Sperry. Transfers, decommits, whatever. Um, I see next to no chance Hawkins leaves. He's going to have a shoe in to the starting job. He displayed some greatness already this season. He made some freshman level mistakes that are not going to hang over his head as he moves into sophomore, junior class. Um, I have a hard time seeing any way um, that he transfers out, and I think he's still got his red shirt intact.
Nope. That's another point I was going to bring up because he played against Tennessee. He played against, he also played against Temple in the first game. So that's two games. He played against Texas. He played against Auburn and South Carolina. With that fifth game, he lost his red shirt. So that brings up another question. And I just realized I never gave a score prediction. I'll do that in
My
a minute.
point, real
But
quick, my point still stands. Even no red shirt, I see no way he transfers.
Well, here's another thing, and then I'll get to my score prediction for the game. Kevin Sperry, he's going to be a true freshman next year. Most true freshman quarterbacks want to redshirt. Jackson Arnold, they wanted him to redshirt last year, but when Dylan Gabriel went down against BYU, we needed someone to lead the second half, and he was our best option, so that cost him his redshirt. Uh, then you've got Michael Hawkins, true freshman this year, no longer has the ability to redshirt. You're going to probably see Kevin Sperry want to redshirt next year. But if Michael Hawkins isn't the starter, then do you think he's going to just go ahead and use his redshirt year to keep that extra year of eligibility? That way he has more than 1 or 2 years as a starter to prove his stock to the NFL?
I think there's a lot of concern for guys about their prospects and their futures, their ability to preserve, whatever eligibility they can. At the same time, I think the style of program that we run here, I think it encourages guys to be ready to go. Use the red shirt if you need to use it, and the coaching staff will support you. But otherwise, be ready to go
Absolutely.
because your opportunity can come at a moment's notice.
Yep.
Um, I I just I don't see a controversy myself. I think things are going to play out the way they play out. The right guy will be in there, and we've got a roster of guys that are going to develop one another, learn from Jackson Arnold, Hawkins will, and then Sperry will learn from Hawkins, so on and so forth. Ultimately, I don't see any of these guys with more than 2 years of starting time at OU. Um, whether they leave to go to the draft or transfer out after a couple seasons if they want to go somewhere else. But um, as far as looking to next season and even the season after, um, Hawkins is going to be here, absent just some catastrophic
Yeah, I
um,
can see that. He's
collapse.
He's definitely a very dedicated player. You hear nothing but great things about him from the beat writers. It sounds like he's just a heck of an athlete, uh, and I it's been a weird position that both he and Jackson Arnold have been put in this year, and it's going to be a weird position they're in the offseason. I'm just glad that this hasn't been a Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams type thing where there's very clear drama and it's very clearly an adversarial battle as opposed to a battle of respect. Because like that's one thing with Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold, he had told Brent Venables because he still had his red shirt going into the South Carolina game. Jackson Arnold had told Brent Venables, I don't want to lose my red shirt just doing stupid snaps, but if you need me, I'm going to be ready. And that's exactly what happened. He was ready. Uh, but going back to the main game, realized I never gave a score prediction. I'm going to a reaction. I'm going to give a prediction of I'm going to say 41-0. I don't think our defense will allow them to get into scoring range, or if they do, I don't see Maine capitalizing on it. But I don't know. I've just kind of begun to lose faith in the offense. I love the guys that we have out there, and I think if we had our starting group of wide receivers, even as bad as our offensive line is, we could at least get one more score per game. Uh, but I just who knows? I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping it ends up being closer to the lines of like 52-0, 63-0. But I think 41-0 is about as close as is about as big as we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. Looking across the rest of the Week 10 landscape this week, three games that really have my eye. Number four, Ohio State at number three, Penn State. Criminally scheduled at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. How you don't have the nighttime whiteout game there, I don't know. Leave that to Fox and the Big Ten to screw that up. Ohio State 3-point favorite in that one. Number one, Oregon favored by 14 and a half at Michigan. This game mid last season would have been appointment viewing. This season, I don't know. Michigan's down after the title season last year. We'll see if their defense can bow up and do anything against Dylan Gabriel. Gabriel this week is the leader in Vegas in Heisman odds. So that'll be an interesting one. I've got Oregon pulling that one out. Ohio State's going to beat Penn State in Happy Valley. And the last interesting one of the day is the primetime ABC game. Number 10 Texas A&M favored by 3 at South Carolina. Something of a trap game here, I think, for Texas A&M. And
Absolutely.
strange as it sounds, I think this is going to be the telling game as to whether they are for real this season because they've had some success. We're going to see if they can sustain it through a down week ahead of what's going to be a crazy matchup with Texas in the Lone Star rivalry. Um, that one, I've got Texas A&M winning. I think it's going to be close for maybe a couple and a half quarters. A&M will pull away midway through second half. Probably take down South Carolina by 10.
I could see that. I had that same game pegged as a trap game because South Carolina, mainly because of their defense, is a sneaky good team. And remember, there's kind of a quarterback controversy going on in College Station right now. Connor Wegman, he did not look good at all against LSU, and it was looking like LSU was going to end up dominating that game. They bring in the different quarterback, and he just steamrolls. He's unstoppable the rest of the game. But the thing is with backup quarterbacks is you don't know how long that can be sustained. I mean, look at Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler. Caleb Williams replaced Spencer Rattler in 2021, and he did great. He did phenomenal for a few games. Then you go up against Baylor, where he completed, I think, 50% of his passes and didn't eclipse 90 passing yards. Then the next week you go up against Iowa State, where again, he didn't even complete 10 passes that game. And if I remember correctly, he didn't eclipse 100 passing yards. Next week against Oklahoma State, he had a pretty good game, but he still barely completed 50% of his passes. He was a true freshman and like he ended up being a superstar in college, much better than Spencer Rattler, but there's a reason, as Brent Venables put it earlier this season, there's a reason the ones are ones and the twos are twos. Mike Elko, he's proven to be a really good coach. There's a reason he had Connor Wegman over this kid. And so especially with the quarterback controversy, I think it'll be an interesting one to watch. Another one that should be a blowout, keyword being should there, but I'm going to be keeping my eye on it, is Florida versus Georgia. Georgia, they dominated Texas. The score was significantly closer than the game was. They dominated Texas, but they were trailing for much of the game against Kentucky, and they struggled to put Auburn away. And Florida, they sent Tennessee to overtime. Florida has been ever since they got blown out against Miami. they haven't been a terrible team. They went up against a good Mississippi State offense. Nothing else is good again about Mississippi State, but they went up against a good offense and outscored them. They went up against UCF, did pretty well against them. They went up against Kentucky and demolished them. Uh, Unlike Georgia, I think this could be a trap game for Georgia. I think it's just going to be one of those kind of like Georgia versus South Carolina in 2019 when South Carolina was just terrible but was able to pull out the win. This just kind of seems like a game that if Georgia's not careful, they could find themselves in like an early 20-3 deficit or 17-3 deficit that they would need to come back from. So, Florida versus Georgia rivalry. Looking forward to seeing that one. And one other game that I think could be a potential trap game is Ole Miss versus Arkansas. Arkansas, they've kind of had some struggles this year, but the difference in their records is one game. Ole Miss is 6-2, Arkansas is 5-3. And Arkansas, they've got an offense. It's not like Arkansas's offense over the last few years. They brought what's his face back. I can't remember his name, and they really have an explosive offense now. I think I think all three of those have the potential to be trap games or upsets. Do I think they'll actually happen? No. I think you'll see Texas A&M win that one, even if it's close. I think you'll see Georgia end up pulling away. I think you'll see Ole Miss end up winning. But I wouldn't put it past any of those to end up coming down to the wire.
I'm with you 100%. We'll see what happens. And God willing, the Oklahoma Maine game will not turn into a trap game. I just don't know anymore. My confidence is very shaky this season.
I
Um,
couldn't handle that. I couldn't.
it is Thursday. We're going to wrap this one up. Make sure to check out our blog, www.soonerpocket.com. Again, there's a ton of great content on there posted throughout the week, pre-game analysis, post-game analysis, all the like. Um, and let's hope for an OU win over Maine. Very convincing win. Let's get the ship back on track and see if we can't maybe get bowl eligibility before the season's up. For Chris, I'm Sam. Boomer Sooner. Stay safe.
Boomer Sooner.